Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of Talk Openly. I'm Jack, and I'm here with my excellent friend, Daniel.
Hi, Jack. Hi, everybody. Good to be with you, as always.
Yes, it really is. And I have to say, I'm a little bit kind of like loopy tonight. I'm just like, my brain is chaos. I'm always chaos, but I think especially today. So I'm excited to have some time with friends to ground out and chat a little bit. We're going to be talking about a vast topic, which I hope we can kind of narrow down a little bit. But yeah, just the concept of time and how we can live mindfully in the moment, doing this dharma thing. So I'm excited, Daniel.
Yeah, it's an infinite topic, isn't it?
It sure is. Well, Daniel, I would love to hear about how you're doing, what's going on in your life, and your training. What's happening in Dharma world?
Yeah. I think that's more interesting to me right now than anything else. Speaking of time, though, and loopy, I made the mistake of having coffee after 3 o'clock today.
Uh-oh.
That's my sort of cutoff period. And so I'm feeling like kind of high energy,
Yeah.
and in my mental state is a little bit more on the sort of wired end. So
Okay.
if I'm talking too much or too fast or whatever, just kind of virtually slap me around.
Just cut you off. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. I'm drinking tea now to make up for it. Herbal
Oh,
tea to make
good.
up.
Good.
Always sort of yin and yang. Yeah. So interestingly, for me, I had in particular my so my training is going well. I did have like a situation where I didn't actually do my sitting meditation yesterday. And then what was really interesting is I when I got up today, I noticed actually already this sort of like, well, I just wait, I'll do it later. And instantly I was like, hey, no, like let's sit down and let's meditate. And then I was like, I noticed like, well, let's just make it shorter than usual. Let's just make it a little one. And then I was like, no, like I want to just do my I started arguing with myself, right? I was
Yeah.
like, nah, I just like, come on, let's just sit. Like, it's okay. Let's just do the usual, And I was really interesting because I sat down and I noticed this sort of continuing. It was like a horse wanting to go home or something, like it just kept sort of pulling, like, oh, really? Maybe we can ding out early or something, right? This was like the first few minutes while I was just kind of settling down. And thankfully I had done some of the the body exercises that Sue has taught us in meditation. I usually incorporate that into the beginning of my practice, and that did help me to sort of settle down a bit. But then I noticed like it didn't take very long, just maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes in for everything to like really calm down, like really nicely.
That's
And
really
then
great.
yeah, and then I sat for the sit. I incorporate its shamatha, and a little bit of Tonglen towards the end. And I noticed at the end, my heart was just filled with gratitude for the practice. And and also for my own willingness, I was also really sort of thankful. So I was grateful for the practice that I know to do, how to do this in the first place. But then also for the training and for my own, I was happy and pleased with my own willingness to do it, to sort of like,
Yes.
not ignore what was going on. I certainly wasn't ignoring it, but be willing to persist and say, look, I recognize that are wanting to sort of veer off and just go get into the day, just jump in and get started. We'll do this later. I noticed it, but I didn't give in to that. And therefore I don't think that it's like developing a habit, that it's giving into that tendency again and again and again that then develops new habits. And it's not the habit I want. I love this training. I love what it does for my mind, and for my relationship to the world around me and the people in it, So I don't want it to slack at all. And so it was such a beautiful experience, to have that sort of wild, crazy, like, I'm just going to go, right? I had my mind was occupied already starting the day. I was like eager to get to work. So there's a fun project that I'm working on, and I saw that, and it was such a good thing to sit first before I got into it.
Well, and yeah, having those thoughts are not, like you said, having the thoughts are not the issue. They're not that they're they're just inevitable, right? Like this is our life, where we have things that pull us away from our intentions and our motivations all the time. And it's just, what do I do when that comes up? Do I, then just, okay, yeah, I'm just gonna jump in the day. Like, F it, I'm gonna come back to meditation. It's fine, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
It's like, do I get myself into that mind that is really, I'm glad that you brought it up, because I'm kind of struggling with that myself too. That mind that doesn't that just doesn't see the Dharma necessarily as my center. Um,
Right. Yes,
and it's,
that's a great
yeah,
way to put it, Jack. Thank you for saying that. I
yeah.
hadn't thought about it that way.
I think that's when I'm really centering myself in Dharma. And Mama put it awesome one time where it was in a talk, and he was sharing about just how people's kind of motivations go sideways. And he was saying that oftentimes people want to bring Dharma to their life, right? People want to bring the Dharma to their life and apply it to our lives to make our lives better. And he was saying actually it needs to be the other way around. We need to bring our lives to the Dharma. And what that means is exactly, what you did, where you were in your life, right? You were feeling your life. It was like, oh, I got to get to this life stuff. Me. And yet you recognize what your actual center was, which is
Yeah.
that, no, my center is Dharma. And so I'm going to bring my life to this right now. And it sounds like that had a really, yeah, just a very grounding effect. So good
Yeah,
work, my friend.
yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I think if I remember it correctly, that there was also one of the times that he brought it up, he likened it to the way we bring, we might add sugar into our tea, right?
Mm,
Like that, you don't go and just like pour the tea over the sugar, right? Like that's not the way you do it. You bring the sugar and you put it in the tea and it dissolves into it.
I
Anyway,
love that.
yeah, me too, me too. He has a nice way of talking.
Yeah, he
Good way
does.
of explaining things for sure.
Yeah,
How, how's your
that one's
practice,
super helpful.
Jack?
Well, so I was kind of mentioning that things have felt just a little bit rocky. I think my motivation has just been not, I don't know, just not very sharp. So I'm just in this period, right, of like dullness and excitability, um and I always get my training done, but there is sometimes the tendency to think of it that way as something to get done,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Rather than being, again, like, we've been talking about this, actually this orientation, um, where everything else centers around that versus the other way around. Um, and so it's really incredible because I notice this very direct correlation between that and how I'm doing mentally.
mm,
Um, in the last month or so, I've just been like, that attitude towards, going to work, where it's just like, oh, this is a grind. Like I've got my whole commute, and then I gotta walk up the hill, and then there's like, oh, I gotta like, I'll do all these groups, and like it's just like it's the grind in my mind. And then
mm,
um yeah, come home and it's like, oh, I gotta do homework. I don't want to do homework, like, so yeah, I it's direct. It's a direct correlation. I know that
yeah,
there's really nothing else causing that, other than this kind of like like shifting out of the perspective of centering Dharma,
yeah,
because I've seen just how profoundly that transforms my life. And actually, um, I'm excited that we're talking about this concept of time tonight, because I think uh, there's a way that whole aspect of the grind really kind of falls away when I'm actively engaging in the Dharma and really trying to learn and apply, the Lam Rim and
Yeah.
our Lojong slogans, and actually like taking moments in my day where I can see like, oh, this is what's happening. Is that it's almost like everything just arises as it arises, like all these moments of my day where it's like, I have my calendar, and there's times where looking at that calendar and all the lists seems like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. But like when I'm really, really practicing and training like wholeheartedly, it's like those things just come up. I engage in them, they pass on, and then something else arises. And it's just this real kind of engagement in the reality of what's happening.
What's happening now? Yeah, wow. You're already jumping into our discussion here.
I know, I'm sorry. We won't get too far into it, but that's
no, because it's resonating with me what you're saying a lot.
Yeah.
And it is all related to time, right?
Yeah.
In a interesting way, right? Like the grind and our dislike of things does have a direct relationship to our perception of time.
Definitely. Yeah. So I'm in I'm in that period of just like needing to come back, needing to reorient, and it's just where I'm at. I have no like doubts in the Dharma and what I'm doing, right? Like it's not like a crisis, but it's more so just like how to develop a relationship with, imagining like your partner, right? Like you go through this period of like the honeymoon phase where everything's just so exciting and beautiful, at least, for me. And now it's feeling kind of like, oh wow, I actually have to build a relationship with my training and my practice. It's not it's not going to do it for me. Like there's this engagement that has to happen.
Yeah, you were absolutely right. It's just like a partner. If you want to have that relationship, then you can't turn away when the going gets tough. You have to remain engaged. And even when you feel like, whatever, like maybe it doesn't feel all happy and beautiful and wonderful in the moment, those are, if you stay with it, if you remain present with it and engaged with it, then it will lead naturally to those blissful, beautiful, joyous moments.
Yeah, definitely. And, of course, also working on like equanimity, right? I think that's one thing that I've really been slipping on, is just having, not biasing happy or exciting or lovely states over ones that feel kind of like a drag.
Yeah.
So, also kind of working with that too.
That's how we got into this mess, Jac.
I know. We got to keep each other accountable. That is one thing that is so helpful about talking with you each week, is that I get these constant reminders of like accountability. So thank you.
Yeah, it's the benefit of Sangha, like I heard Lama say the other day, that in the West the Sangha jewel is weak, and I'm really glad that I don't feel that way. Like my relationship to the Sangha is quite strong, and you being a remarkable facet of it. It's a multifaceted jewel, right? And you're a beautiful, remarkable facet.
Thank you. Yes, you are too. I'm so grateful for Sangha. I'm so grateful for Dharma. We just got to keep going.
Yep.
Keep pushing through all those barriers. Yeah.
Let's do it. Do you want to do some mind training with the Lojong slogan
do some
generator
mind
on the
training.
website?
Let's do it. I'm up for it.
All right, here, I'm going to share my screen. And here we've got the lionsroardharmacenter.org random Lojong slogan generator. So, all right, let's see what happens. I'm going to push the button.
It wants us to pause,
Yeah, apparently so.
take a moment,
There it
a
goes.
breather.
There it
All
goes.
right. Number
All right,
45,
let's do it.
acquire the 3 root causes. And it looks like, so it says, according to Charla Kyabgon, in the practice of Lojong, cultivating compassion through training the mind, the 3 causes are 1, the spiritual friend, 2, the spiritual instructions, and 3, a supportive environment.
Mm.
And how interesting that we were just kind of remarking on, the Dharma and the Sangha. And a little bit before that, we were talking about Lama and his instruction.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, Guru, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, which the first 2 of those, Guru and Buddha, might be seen as the spiritual friend.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that one of the things that I know that is encouraged within within our tradition is sort of recognizing the preciousness of our human life, right? In particular, because somehow or other we have acquired these 3 root causes, right? Like here we are, we have found the spiritual friend, we're receiving the spiritual instructions, and we are so fortunate to have a supportive environment. And that's not just Sangha, that's also our privileged position within our societies and all of that we have resources, we have time, we have our physical and mental states are such that we can follow the instructions, we can listen to our spiritual friend. And so we have everything that we need. It's all there.
Yeah.
As you said, we just have to do it. We just have to apply, right?
Yeah, that is amazing. So that's really where, looking at the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma, how very uniquely precious our situation is. And yeah, not letting that pass by.
Right.
Because as we are learning, and as you quoted, I think in your notes here, Jack Cornfield says, the trouble is you think you have time.
I love that one.
It's a good quote.
I discovered this amazing website where I actually got this quote. And the name of the website, I'll say it here, it's called fakebuddhaquotes.com. And and what I love about it is because if you look on Pinterest or anywhere where there's like these sort of inspirational sayings, so much stuff is attributed to Buddha. It's not true, right?
Yeah.
Like, maybe it sort of carries some of that message, but it's not actually in any way attributed to Buddha. And so, in fact, in this case, the quote was attributed to Buddha, but it's not true. It's not true at all. It was Jack Cornfield in one of his instructions, it was like a spiritual instruction book.
Yeah. Nice.
You're right.
It works. And that's the thing, is that we have to recognize that our time here is short. We think we've got all the time in the world, and yeah, it's passing us by. And it's it's kind of like these it's like two tracks, right, where it's like at the same time that we're like, there's not much time. Like we really, we've only got so much time here. We don't know how long it's going to last. And at the same time, the only progress we can make is the progress we can make, like that we can do, and it's going to take time. And so it's like these kind of dual understandings. So yeah, we just gotta meditate.
Dual understandings I think that's a key sort of phrase for our discussion, that there's multiple ways of sort of looking at this, and we want to be somewhere in the middle, right? It's not one way or the other, but it's all the ways. And I do like that Jack Cornfield quote. I'll say it again. The trouble is you think you have time, right? And I love it because it's very similar, if you think about it, to this quote. Can I give another quote? So you may have heard it from Einstein. Time is not a condition in which we live. it's a condition in which we think. And so I love it. I happen to that I discovered that particular quote through it's in the lyrics to one of my favorite songs by a group called Elephant Revival. They're an amazing band, and they have this song called "What Is Time," right? And so they use this quote: "Time is not a condition in which we live; it's a condition in which we think." And then they say, "And we can change the way we think." Right?
Mm.
And then they answer the question. This is my favorite part of the song. They answer the question, well, what is time? It's when the sun comes up, the sun goes down, the moon comes out, and the people dance all around.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I love it. It's a great song.
Yeah. So that, yeah, so that it's all relative.
It's
Um,
all relative, right? My kids have gotten like they get mad at me, like my youngest has always been sort of very, very, very time oriented, right?
mm,
And sort of fixated on when things are going to happen and like what time's going to happen, what days are going to happen, what's going to happen then, and then what, and then what, and then what, that kind of thing. And early on, I would be like, time's just an illusion, like, and
I would be so mad.
yeah, right. So they have requested repeatedly for me to just put aside my philosophical bullshit, and they have more than one time.
Yeah.
They've had the higher authority, their mother even say, hey, sometimes it's not helpful. Right. So I've learned it's been years of this stuff, so I've learned like that it's not helpful all the time, right? Sometimes we have to meet people where they're at.
That's right.
But
That's right.
I've really enjoyed ever since I realized that time was an illusion. I didn't always think that, right? It's actually part of my spiritual journey, I think, is this understanding
Mm,
relationship to time. um, and so when I recognize like, oh, it's not real, it's just like a sub operating system in our minds, right? It's one that we sort of fixate on sometimes,
yeah.
like my youngest kid does, but it's not true in any sense, right? It's helpful. It's helpful.
Hmm.
It's a good concept. Nothing wrong with it, but like it's just a concept. It's a way for us to like understand and like measure stuff in this world, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, we kind of have to, we live on a planet where there's a sun that rises and sets every day, like the song references. And so our lives are really dependent on that. But who knows? Like I love thinking, kind of like sci-fi y and thinking about, what other beings are there that live in a totally different system of time? How do they measure time?
What?
Um,
Yeah. Are there timeless beings?
yeah. Well, it seems like in Tibetan Buddhism that
I
maybe there
believe
are
it.
some timeless beings.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, I don't think that there have to be. Like even in our own world, there. I think that it's conceivable anyway that there are beings that don't experience time anything like what we experience, right?
Yeah.
Even something simple like a dog, right? Like
Yeah.
right, when you leave if you leave the house, like a lot of people leave their dogs at home when they go to work and stuff, and we don't know, like, does that just like pass by in a blip for the dog, right? or
Right.
or are they sitting there, watching the clock and being like, well, I've got 7.5 hours left, or are they just
Yeah.
gonna like go and be for a little bit, right? And then all of a
Right.
sudden you're back again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know we are such like humans, we are such time bound creatures. And like I feel
Yes.
that is so, deeply entwined with being ego bound. And that like,
Yes.
like I was talking about earlier, just getting so wrapped up in all the things, that was like,
Mhm.
okay, I got to get all this stuff done. I've got to eat. I'm not getting what I want. People are bugging me. And it just, there's really, or like even just, not even where there's kind of like that conflicted state of mind, but just simply that, yeah, I have to get up in the morning and when the sun rises, and I shower, and I, do things that are very much bound by that I need to sleep, that there's this
Yeah.
period where I'm not sleeping, and then a period that I have to sleep.
Right.
And it's like that's what's like our bodies were biologically, time bound.
Yeah.
And so it's really fascinating, and I feel like when I'm kind of like when I'm fighting that, I have put up a lot of resistance to the fact that that's just true. That's like the way that that life is here. Then that's when it starts to feel like a drag again. Is
Yeah.
like like, oh, but I just want to stay in bed. I don't want to get up, and I'm just fighting that like inevitable, like continuous, moving on of time,
Yeah.
which is that the sun is rising and there's more light, and that means that now I go to work to be with people who are as well, getting up because the sun is up. Yeah, so it's like it's just fascinating that we're so in this little perspective that we kind of have to be in, but there's also another way
Yeah, and
of being.
there's so many different ways to change that perspective, right? To shift it around a little bit.
Yeah,
To
what are some of the
experience
ways?
to experience it as something different. One of the ways that I like uh, I really enjoy thinking about is so this again, and this has to do with the relativity of time. It's sort of like in human existence, somebody that lives a long time, especially if it's a high quality life, if they live a long time, that's viewed as something quite valuable, and a short life is something not to be desired. And it's again, but it's relative, right? So like when all human beings, if they all only live to be 30 years old, if 30 years old was a geriatric human being, then that compressed time frame compared to the 80, 90 years that we might expect today would seem perfectly normal. We wouldn't have a problem with it unless we were 25 years old and some of the population was living to be 125, right?
Mm,
That would seem somewhat problematic. And I like to think about it in terms of, there's like the little gnats and flies, they spend their life in these different places as different, they go through different stages, and then they hit this stage where they exist for maybe like a day or two, right? Just as a fly, as up in the air. Like maybe they were a larva before, crawling around for a while, and now they're flying around, and maybe like crane flies, they can't even eat. All they could do is find a mate, reproduce, and die. And it only is only a few
yeah,
days. It's a limited amount of time, but everything happens within that time. It's a fine cycle, right?
yeah,
It's a complete cycle, and that's, I think, what we really yearn for, is whatever the cycle is, that it be complete. If we were a redwood tree, right, then we would want, quite a long cycle. We wanted it to be a lot more than like a mayfly, right, or a human being. And so
mm.
like I like to just like, that's a fun sort of thought experiment,
A good
to just sort of
meditation, yeah.
shift it a little bit, right? Like how much time is really needed or really wanted here, and how important it is. Like so we'll maybe we could talk a little bit about the difference between like the Western concept of time as being linear and sort of this
Mm,
Eastern concept of time being cyclical. Because I think that's
mm-hmm.
another one of those things that when we really contemplate it, if we're willing to entertain the notion that time might not be the way that we thought it was, if we have this sort of Western linear model, then that
Yeah.
can be super helpful too in shifting our perspective. Right? Not
Oh,
to say that
yeah.
one concept is better. One concept might be better in some sense than the other, but like they're both fine, right? They're both just concepts. But if we can add a little bit of, if we can find a middle ground between them, maybe we'd
Mm.
be a little bit happier.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, there is this really terrifying experience of time, like uh when we, realize actually that yes, like I am going to die, and it feels like the clock is just ticking. And I think what's been somewhat therapeutic on psychologically for me, with the dharma, is that how I used to think about my life was that I die, and then I just kind of disappear, right? And with the Dharma, there's, obviously we want to get out of samsara, right? But I think right now I'm still thinking within like but I'm scared. I'm like me, I'm myself, right? Like I still want to feel like there's some kind of like ongoing thread, right? And
Some
there's,
continuity, yeah.
yeah. And there's, this reminder that like, okay, well, if I, really believe Dharma as I've been learning it, there is this continuity of my mind through the actions that I engage in right now. And so there's this way that like the kind of still clinging to a me that doesn't die, right? So like this kind of Christian sense of like, well,
Yeah.
when I die, then I'll go to heaven and I'll live forever. And obviously, that the misconception is very different. It's that, you don't go on, but your karma goes on through all the actions that you've engaged in. And that's just interesting because it's like it's, well, for one, it's very reorienting, right? It's like, okay, so then what is the purpose of this kind of time-bound life? It's to kind of create the momentum of creating like positive change, not just for myself in this life, but for future lives and for anyone that I'm engaging with in all of those lives. And so it's kind of like that ripple effect of our actions that happen. It's really fascinating and like, yeah, kind of, yeah, just very mind blowing. And my kind of linear brain is still really, I don't understand it. But at least kind of philosophically, I'm starting to get more of a grasp.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I think that, like, I think it's been a remarkable change in my life and one that has helped a lot to shift this perspective on time. And it continues to shift, but I had that same linear model, in the beginning, God created, right? And in the beginning, I came out, here I am, I was born, right? And so then it's going to end as well. I had the same kind of belief, maybe not, that I was going to go to heaven, but that there would be an end to time as we know it, right? And there would be a post-time period where I could live forever and be perfect and everything would be hunky-dory, right? And I would get to continue. There would be no annihilation, right? And so, it's interesting because we fear this annihilation of, we identify so heavily with these bodies and with these minds as we know it, that we, of course, fear the annihilation because we can see, right? Beginning, end, two go together, right? Of course, it's scary, right?
Yeah.
And I lived with a lot of death anxiety on a regular, like it was no joke, right? Like when I left the religion of my youth, I was like, oh boy, this is gnarly, right? Like terribly depressing and anxiety inducing. It's really that model of time can be quite oppressive, right? And as far as the religious or the moral implications of it are, like that there's some being outside of that time that controls if you're good enough, if you do the right thing, then you get to make it to that heaven or to that state, or that timeless sort of state. But you have to like meet the expectations of some kind of the creator, the person, the thing that started the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
And so like that model, I mean, I think in a way it's sort of, from a moral standpoint or whatever, is sort of wanting to achieve the similar goal, right? But I think that the way it goes about it is clumsy, and I don't think that I think that it's in many ways quite harmful. It was to me, right? I can't speak for other people, but it sounds like maybe that's the case for you as well, right? And not breaking. I don't think breaking is quite it, but like expanding our thinking about time is really quite important. And I think that what I love about the sort of the cyclical model of time, that's that it's found within Hinduism, within Buddhism, Jainism, and within different sort of Eastern philosophical traditions. One of the things I love about it is that it's sort of it's if you just examine the way things are, then you do notice this rhythm. You pointed it out yourself. The song pointed it out. Sun comes up, sun goes down, right? There's this rhythmic quality, this cyclic quality to it. And you can see that it actually happens at all levels. It happens on an incredibly minute level, right? In nanosecond space, it's happening. And in these massive, huge, huge things that are like segments of time that we can't even fathom, right? Our
Yeah.
our little brains can't handle infinity, right?
Right.
Like, but it's really fascinating to me to begin to sort of like play with these ideas of like these larger cycles, right? Of like, and I love it because when I even modern physics, or if you start to look at some of the modern theories, they're bubbling up about multiverses, or the possibility that our universe, maybe the Big Bang wasn't quite it, maybe it wasn't a big like a start like that from nothing, but rather that
Mm.
it's like breathing in and out, coming and going,
Mm.
coming and going. And oh my gosh, right? The Hindus, the Buddhists, these folks have been saying
Yeah.
this for a long, long time, right? And so I really enjoy that sort of modern science is beginning to examine it from a similar lens, and
I
allow
like
for the
that
fact that
too.
maybe, just maybe, our concept, our linear concept of time has been guiding our scientific view as well, right? And
Yeah.
has been limiting our understanding of the universe or universes as or whatever, our realm as we might know it, right? So now we get to expand beyond that. And I think that's possible in our lives too, our own little tiny little human individual, my life, your life, and everybody else's. I think that by really considering these notions of time and sitting with them in meditation, right, in a very literal sort of sense, like
Yeah.
one of the things that I remember before I came to Buddhism, I did quite a I learned a lot about Hinduism, right? In particular about Advaita Vedanta, and I remember this story. It was a beautiful, beautiful story um, about it's the Vedic legend of Kakudmi, right? Can I tell it?
Yeah, please.
All
Yeah.
right, all right. So Kakudmi has this beautiful daughter, right? And she's just amazing. She's gorgeous. She's smart. She's got all the things going. And so it was really hard to find a suitable husband for her, right? Nobody was good enough, nobody at all. And so they together, father and daughter, they travel to the god Brahma's home, right? To his realm. It's on Mount Meru, right? And like they travel there and they've got this list of candidates of like possible husbands, right? Like, okay, so they go, but Brahma's busy. He's actually in a concert, right? So he's at a concert and he's listening to some beautiful music or whatever. And so they respectfully wait, right? Father and son hang out and they wait for a little bit while Brahma does his thing. And then finally the concert's over. Brahma comes out and he says, "Hey, how can I help you?" And they say, "Well, here's the situation, and here's this list that we have of potential suitors, and we wanted your advice. Like, what should we do?" And he's like, "Oh my goodness. Well, the thing is that time doesn't operate here. We're at a different level of time, and so it's actually been millions and millions and millions of years
Oh my gosh.
since you left,
All the
right? So
suitors
what
are dead.
all of the
Long
suitors
gone.
are dead, their descendants are dead, everybody that you knew, everything that you ever knew is gone and dead, right?
Yeah.
And they were so distraught. They were like, "Oh no!" Right? He goes, "Well, don't worry. We're in a new cycle, right? Because that's the whole idea. We're in a new cycle, and you're very lucky because Vishnu has incarnated, and he's a handsome bachelor, and you'd make a great wife for him. I'll send you back,
Oh my
and you guys can get
gosh.
married." And then they go, and like nothing is the same or whatever, but they're back, and whatever, all kinds of things continue, and life goes on. It's all fine. But I
Wow.
remember that story, and it stayed with me because like that and other stories around these sort of big blocks of time, big
Yeah.
blocks, these big huge cycles.
Where
I
you're
find
just like totally like totally mind struck. There's no way to comprehend. But to know that is what's happening. Like there is no beginning and end to our universe.
No,
It's like it's just
no.
ongoing.
We can
Yeah.
impose that on it if we'd like to. If we
Yeah.
find it helpful for some reason, then we can impose that concept of beginning and end, right,
Yeah.
onto the universe, right? It's very similar to this notion of so the way that time itself, we quantify it, right? That's one of its purposes, one of the reasons why we have this
Right.
concept, right? Is so that we can measure like discrete units of time. There's seconds and there's minutes and there's hours and days and da 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 da, right? And
Right.
those are all these sort of quantas, these quantified units of time. And one of the things I love about that is that, you know, like I dig what little I don't claim to understand quantum physics whatsoever. I just want to disavow any notion of that. But one of the ideas behind quantum physics that I really enjoy, quanta is in the name itself, right? Is this notion, you know, of the particle wave duality. You
Oh
know what I'm
yeah.
talking? Yeah.
Yep. That
You know?
a particle can be both a wave and
Particle.
oh yeah.
Yeah. It can
So
be,
static and moving, right? Is
that's
that the
right. It can
idea?
be
Okay.
yeah, it just depends on the context of the observation, on the observer, right?
Yeah.
And so what I love about that is to sort of extrapolate from that and to realize that like that, yeah, absolutely. You can say days, hours, minutes, all of that, right? But you can also just observe these rhythms, these cycles. That's
Yeah.
true as well. And those rhythms, those cycles, those are like the waves, right? And so like they're not one or the other. It's both because they're both just concepts, right? They're just
Yeah.
different ways of looking at the same thing. And in the same way, beginning and end, sure, no problem. Because even within the cyclical model, there is a beginning of different periods, right? There's a beginning of a universe. So like they have this notion of a kalpa, right?
Oh yeah.
And
Can I
that's
read
like,
that?
yeah,
I
go for
want
it.
to
Do
read
it.
about a
Do it.
kalpa.
Read
So,
it. Yeah, what's
and
a
I know
kalpa?
so kalpa, that's kind of like a measurement of time in Buddhism, right? In Tibetan Buddhism. And they describe it as the age of a universe, which is just like I love that idea. And so do you know who described it this way? If there was a teacher who described this idea of the mountain that I'm going to read
There's
here.
there's a number of teachers who referenced it. It actually is an old, I believe it comes from the Vedas. So
Okay,
it predates even Buddhism, the
got
notion
it.
of a
Yeah.
kalpa. But it's yeah, go for it.
So yeah, this is how you even define a kalpa. So imagine taking a mountain that is 6 miles long and 6 miles wide. So, or 6 miles high, excuse me. So vast, right? A bird flies over the mountain once every 100 years with a silk scarf in its beak and brushes the tip of the mountain. At this rate, the stone will be polished down to a tiny, smooth pebble long before a kalpa has elapsed. Long before a kalpa has elapsed.
Ram Dass
Brilliant.
Ram Dass adds into that. He says, "That's how long you've been doing this.
Mm.
That's how long you've been doing this. You've been doing this samsaric thing that long."
Is that why I'm feeling exhausted today?
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
just like, I'm tired of like dragging the silk scarf across the
right.
mountain every 100 years.
I mean,
I'm
can you
kind of
imagine?
over
Okay, I mean,
it.
like, I love it. I love it. The very because your brain can't. So we can't imagine infinity and these really long cycles of time. We really can't imagine either. But we can imagine a big old granite rock, right? And we can imagine a scarf dragging across it, and knowing like that scarf's not going to do anything to the rock, especially if it only passes by once every 100 years, right? And just touches a tip of it. But then you just know, like, okay, but it keeps doing it and it keeps doing it and it keeps doing it, just doesn't stop doing it. And eventually, sure, eventually it's going to wear itself down, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. And I think it's so helpful, right? Because, you know, within these concepts of time, and especially the cyclical aspect of it, what we see there are in fact these Buddhist ideas of impermanence,
Yeah.
right? That's actually all it is. It's
Yeah.
what is time but a measure, an attempt to measure impermanence, like
Right.
to measure these quantified states, right? Quantized states of
Yeah.
impermanence, to take the solid, right? To make it solid somehow, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And
yeah. And that's always been kind of like a salve for me.
yeah,
Like when I really get kind of caught up in, let's say, like the news, or just like the everyday bullshit that happens every day because it's inevitable, like
yeah,
to kind of, if I meditate on like geologic time, even, which even, geologic time, there was a time before the earth was even our little globe shaped earth, you know um and so that is much more vast, but bringing it down to our very own planet, if I just sit with that, and recognize just how tiny I am, it's such a relief. It's like, oh yeah, this shit doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It
yeah,
doesn't matter.
yeah, yeah,
It just kind of tells my brain like it's okay. It's
yeah.
okay, Um, I watched this excellent video of Carl Sagan the other day, that was talking about geologic time, and it blew me away. It was like such the perfect meditation that can help just really just deflate the ego, right? And so he's describing geologic time as though it were a January through December calendar, and he goes through, all the months. Here's what's happening in geologic earth time. And then you get to December 31st, the very last like 4 minutes of that calendar year is when humanity comes into existence and is starting to do all the stuff that we've done. And modern history is just like the last few seconds.
Yeah.
And it was just such a profound reminder of like, gosh, my footprint compared to all of this is so small, and
Yeah.
um and it's okay that I'm this small. I don't need to have this much pride. It's good that
Yeah.
I don't need to have this much pride.
Right.
And it's so reorienting to think of it in that way.
It's similar to what the astronauts talk about when they look at, they get high enough and they can see the little Earth spinning there, and there's this sort of this, I forget what they call the effect. It has a name, but it's like this, oh my God, like all of the stuff, all the drama, the wars, the gains, the losses, the whole human story unfolding on that little thing right there, right? Like it's the same kind of, you get some perspective, right? And I think that meditating on these things is like, it's really, really helpful. It's calming, it's
It is
soothing,
calming.
right?
Yes.
Like it does seem, when we like, especially if we're, have sort of just one way of looking at time, it can seem scary and kind of oppressive. It can feel kind of like smothering in a way to think about these long cycles, right? It can be kind of scary. Like it's like I'm just so insignificant. I'm already annihilated,
Mm.
essentially. I'm so nothing already. But on another level, it can be incredibly freeing to really like to sit with that and to sort of ponder it. Like what does it all mean, right? Like it makes me think of the last words attributed to Buddha, right?
Mm.
Because this thing that we find ourselves in, this sort of whatever existence, it's just this sort of ever-changing impermanence, right? Like that's all it is. And we do all kinds of things to cope with it when we find ourselves in this ever-changing impermanence, right? But Buddha's last words are, all conditioned things are impermanent. Work out your own salvation with diligence.
Yeah.
And and I'll borrow another one of those fake Buddha quotes from Jack Cornfield. And he says, there's only one time when it's essential to awaken. That time is now,
Mhm.
right? but our concept of now can be the whole thing, right? Like it's not like, right, like we recognize, we talk about this, we've talked about this on previous episodes related to like mental health, right? That we get so kind of neurotic actually when we're thinking about time. We think about the past, so we get depressed. We think about the future, we get anxious. And then what do? Well, you become mindfully present, and then you lose some of that anxiety and that depression because you're just here now. But what is now? Is it now a nanosecond? Is now a minute? Is now an hour? When is now, right? And if we allow those conceptual structures to soften and to maybe even sort of like fall apart for a little bit, all of a sudden it's wide open, right? And it's all, and it's all connected, right? And it's not, this is when I think about, sometimes I've had trouble relating to past teachers, for example, and to sort of these other concepts within Tibetan Buddhism about things that have happened in the past and how we can have great like gratitude and still, we can still pray to Guru Rinpoche, right? Who lived on earth many a long time ago, right?
Mhm.
And this notion actually that is now too, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that when he was running around the hills with Geshe Sogol, right, and hiding all these what do they call them,
Sacred texts and
sacred texts, right, termas.
yeah.
Yeah, that's now,
Yeah.
right? Like it's in the now too, right? Because
Yeah.
the now is the whole dead gum thing, right? All the kalpas and the nanoseconds, all those things.
Yeah.
It's
It's
one.
happening.
It's just this. It's just this one ever-changing thing, right? It's
Yeah.
impermanent, and
Yeah. And
it's
we
gorgeous.
are all of it.
We're
We're
all
all
of
of
it.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. That really helps me too when I think about uh all the different everything that led to me being right here, right now. I almost think of myself as like a canyon. To get back to geologic time, it's interesting.
yeah,
I sometimes think of myself as this canyon that's being, slowly etched away
yeah,
by a river. And I think, of that, like, so this is so much farther and longer than me here. It's so much more than Jac, and within Jac is reflected all everything, right? Because everything is leading to our kind of co-creation and being here.
yeah. And the way that river flows decides how that canyon forms, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's where, when, like, I think it's really important to not get lost in, oh, well, it's big and it's long and I've got time. No, actually, right? Um, that's not quite how it is. We need to work it out now, because what happens in the future is directly connected to this very present moment right now, right? And we want things to be good, right? We want things to turn out a certain way, right? Maybe we want to be enlightened, something to that effect. And maybe we want to be helpful to all sentient beings. Maybe we want to accomplish big goals or whatever. But whatever that happens to be, we got to work it out now, right? And we got to,
Yeah.
our actions now, right? That's the whole concept of this, is that karma is what's dictating how these causes and conditions come to be. How were we formed over 15 billion years? How did that come to be? It came to be through, the causes and consequences within karma, right? Within that, the law of karma. And so like
Right.
focusing on that now is actually really, really important, right? We don't
Yeah.
have time. We don't have time to slack off and to behave unethically with our
Yeah.
body, speech, and mind.
Or to despair. There's no need to despair.
No,
We can do it. And can we allow our, the teachings that we're receiving to shape us, and to move us forward, rather than these really intoxicating impulses that pull us in another direction. I think I mean, it's really brilliant. You know, I'm constantly reminded in every conversation, you know, that we have, is that like, okay, there's no need to despair. Like,
No.
we have everything here, but we just got to engage with it.
We have everything here, as the slogan said earlier, right? We have the spiritual friend, we've
Yeah,
got the spiritual instructions, and we have a supportive environment. Right.
we've
And
got
now
it.
we're not guaranteed to have that necessarily in a future lifetime, whether we're talking
That's right.
about within our own lifetime, a future us, or if we're talking about something else on a larger scale. We're not guaranteed those, right? So we want to do what we can to make use of what we have now, so that yeah, it'll pass forward.
Yep. Yep. And to not make enemies out of you know, those of us around us who at one point were our mothers, you know, that's another
Oh
important one
boy.
to
Oh
think
boy.
about.
We should have a whole show
I know.
to talk about that concept. I think that we really,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that would be helpful. And yet to also, I think another good reminder for me, that is somewhat related to cyclical time, is having that beginner's mind, of like joy and eagerness, you know, that I felt as a beginner, to kind of again keep coming back to this motivation, this intention to, yeah, to get out of this craziness of samsara, and that, yeah, I think that can be a good way to orient, is how do I come back to that beginning point?
Well, because
How can
you
the
know, and that's
beginning
the,
be just now, all the
and
time?
we don't have to work to be beginners. We are
We
beginners.
are, yeah.
It's only through our ignorance that we think we're not beginners, right? Of course, how
Yeah.
could we not be beginners, right? It's always changing. Everything's new. It's never the
Yeah,
same,
that's
right?
right.
As Heraclitus said, the same man doesn't step into the same river twice,
That's right.
right? And so, like, in that sense, you're a beginner each and every time, always, right? Whether you're, and it doesn't matter which cycle you're talking about. Like, as soon as we hang up, right? As soon as we're done, new you, me, new me,
Yeah,
right? Like, it's all new, right? Like, if we allow ourselves that, if we just remember, like, oh, right, actually, it's brand new me right now.
yeah. Constantly emerging,
Yeah,
constantly arising and subsiding.
that's right. Waving up and waving down.
Yeah. Sweet.
Let's ride those waves, dude. It's totally tubular.
Oh, Daniel, thank you so much
It's
for
always so
hanging out
fun.
with me.
Mm.
You know, I feel, as always, I feel motivated and just really grateful.
Yeah, same. Very uplifting.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can do this. We got
we
this,
can do
Jack.
this. We got it.
We
Just
are
gotta keep
doing
going.
this,
We
Jack.
are. That's true. We are.
We have done it. We are doing it, and we will do it.
That's right. Oh, wow. Look at that. All the times. All right, my friends. Well, take care of yourselves. And we look very much forward to next Tuesday.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.